Did you know that 2022 marks the 75th anniversary of the Canadian Wildlife Service, Canada's federal organization dedicated to wildlife conservation? Let's explore its ongoing legacy by traveling across Canada and across time. In the early 1900s, Canada began to witness significant declines in bird populations because of human activity. In response, Canada and the United States signed the Migratory Birds Convention in 1916. It established a commitment to cooperatively manage shared bird populations and gave the Canadian federal government responsibility for managing most bird species in Canada. In 1947, this responsibility was given to the organization we now know as the Canadian Wildlife Service, or CWS for short. By the 1960s, Canada was experiencing agricultural intensification, industrialization, and urban development resulting in the loss of wildlife habitats. To counter this threat, the Canadian Wildlife Service increased focus on protecting and conserving important wildlife habitats. The passage of the Canada Wildlife Act in 1973 allowed for CWS to establish many more federally protected areas in places that are important habitats for both migratory birds and other wildlife, including species at risk. Protected areas like Prince Edward Point are an essential tool for achieving nature conservation outcomes for wildlife, habitats, and ecosystems. Today, there's a growing network of more than 145 national wildlife areas and migratory bird sanctuaries across Canada. Combined, these areas provide over 15 million hectares of protected habitats where wildlife can thrive. In 1992, Canada and its global partners agreed to work together to address biodiversity loss by signing the Convention on Biological Diversity. Today, there are 196 countries that share this commitment. The convention was a significant turning point for nature conservation policy around the world. In Canada, it set the stage for many of the conservation programs, policies, and legislation that followed, including the Species at Risk Act, that's celebrating its 20th anniversary. Passed in 2002 to prevent wildlife species across Canada from disappearing, this act continues to provide for the recovery of hundreds of threatened and endangered species. A cornerstone of the Canadian Wildlife Service's success is its partnerships, both internationally and domestically. International partnerships are critical for successful wildlife management, as many species, particularly migratory birds, spend time in countries other than Canada, like the semi-palmated sandpiper. Despite the seemingly large numbers that congregate on the shores of Atlantic Canada during the fall migration, their population is declining. To combat this, CWS is collaborating with partners in northeastern Brazil and academic partners at Mount Allison University to ensure their habitats both here and in South America can be protected. We continue to benefit from the knowledge and experience of Indigenous peoples, the original stewards of this land. CWS recognizes how fundamental these partnerships are to conservation and protection efforts and are committed to supporting Indigenous-led conservation and on-the-ground initiatives such as the Indigenous Guardians Program. In 2018, the Deitcho First Nations and the Government of Canada signed an agreement committing to co-manage the Adéji Indigenous Protected and Conserved Area in the Northwest Territories. This agreement protects over 14,000 square kilometers of lands and waters with great ecological, cultural, and spiritual significance. For 75 years, the passionate staff of the Canadian Wildlife Service, together with their partners, have established themselves as leaders in nature conservation and protection efforts both in Canada and around the world. Let their ongoing legacy inspire you to contribute to conservation efforts in your own community.